The thrill of sneaking into the zoo after dark had always been a reckless fantasy of mine, a way to escape the mundane reality of life in the suburbs. My friends and I had spent countless nights parked outside the gates, whispering about the wild animals that roamed just beyond the fence. But tonight, it was just me, 20 years old and determined to prove I was brave enough to do something crazy. It was nearly midnight when I slipped through a gap in the fence, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The moon was high, casting an eerie glow over the animal enclosures as I crept through the shadows. The sounds of the zoo at night were a strange mix of rustling leaves, distant growls, and the occasional chirp of nocturnal creatures. I felt alive, but as I made my way toward the lion exhibit, a strange sound caught my attention. A low, muffled thud echoed from the direction of the staff building, followed by an unsettling silence that seemed to stretch on forever. I paused, my heart pounding. Was someone else here? I brushed it off as my imagination, the excitement of the night playing tricks on me. With a nervous chuckle, I continued toward the lions, the thrill of adventure overpowering my caution. But as I approached the staff building, the sense of unease crept back in. I glanced toward the dimly lit windows, half expecting to see a shadow moving behind the glass. Instead, I saw nothing but darkness. Then I heard it again. A sound like something heavy being dropped, followed by a series of muffled voices. I hesitated, debating whether to investigate. My gut screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity pulled me closer. Was I overreacting? I thought, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on me. I took a deep breath and stepped toward the building, my heart racing as I approached the door. My name is Alex Harper, and I was just a college student looking for a thrill. It was a chilly Friday night in October, and the moon hung high in the sky, casting long, ghostly shadows across the ground. I'd always loved animals, and the zoo had been a haven for me in my youth. This was the first time I dared to break the rules and see it after hours. The lights were dim, and I felt a rush of excitement as I crept through the narrow pathways, the faint scent of animal feed lingering in the air. My intention was simple: to spend a few hours exploring the exhibits, maybe take some photos for my social media, and then slip back home undetected. But now, standing outside the staff building, I felt the thrill of adventure begin to fade, replaced by a creeping sense of danger. The sounds inside were becoming more distinct: raised voices, the clatter of something heavy being moved, and the occasional thud. Just a couple of staff members wrapping up for the night, I told myself. Nothing to worry about, but something felt off. The zookeepers had always been friendly, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the voices sounded strained, urgent. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to leave, but curiosity got the better of me again, and I found myself moving closer to the door. There it was again, a loud thud, followed by silence. I pressed my ear against the building's cool surface, straining to hear. My heart raced as I registered the sounds of struggle, the unmistakable sound of something hitting the floor. As I stood there, the air around me began to feel heavy, charged with a sense of foreboding. I glanced around, half expecting someone to jump out from the shadows. The feeling of being watched crept over me like ice water, and I couldn't shake it off. I should have turned back, but the adrenaline kept me rooted in place. Then, just as I decided to pull away, I caught sight of a figure through the window. A man in a dark jacket was moving erratically, his movements quick and agitated. I couldn't see his face, but the way he was gesticulating wildly made my stomach churn. Suddenly, the front door swung open, and the man stepped outside. My breath caught in my throat as I instinctively hid behind a nearby bush, my heart hammering in my chest. "Get it done," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "We don't have time to waste." The man stepped back inside, and I could hear the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. The tension in my gut tightened, and I fought the urge to run. What was happening inside that building? Then, without warning, the door swung open again, and I heard another figure speak. "Did you hear that? I think someone's out here." I ducked lower, my heart racing, praying they wouldn't spot me. The second man's voice was different. Calmer, more authoritative. Ignore it. We're almost done. Almost done with what? I thought, panic rising as I realized I couldn't just stand there. I had to get out of there before I was discovered. I began to back away slowly, trying to remain as quiet as possible when suddenly, a loud crash echoed from inside the building. It sounded like something had been thrown against the wall, followed by a muffled yell of anger. I froze in place, my heart pounding in my ears. Adrenaline surged through my body, and I felt a primal instinct to flee. I turned and sprinted back toward the main path of the zoo, my feet pounding against the ground as I raced toward the exit. But as I approached the main gate, I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy, determined footsteps. I glanced back and saw the first man, the one in the dark jacket, emerging from the staff building, his expression twisted with rage. "Hey, stop!" "Ah!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the night. I felt a surge of panic and sprinted faster, my legs burning as I pushed myself to the limit. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew it couldn't be good. "Get back here!" he yelled, gaining on me. I had dashed around a corner, praying for a place to hide. My mind raced as I searched for options. That's when I spotted the lion enclosure up ahead, its tall chain-link fence casting long shadows in the dim light. I had had no time to think. I ducked through a small opening in the fence, heart racing as I entered the enclosure, praying the lions would remain asleep. The last thing I needed was to become a meal for a big cat. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of hay and something musky. I crouched behind a large rock, my heart pounding as I tried to catch my breath. I could hear the man's footsteps getting closer, his voice laced with frustration. "Where are you?" he called out, his tone low and threatening. "You can't hide forever." I pressed my back against the cool stone, my mind racing as I tried to formulate a plan. The lions were lounging in the corner of the enclosure, their bodies relaxed, but their eyes flicking toward the sound of the intruder. I couldn't risk drawing their attention. "Please," I whispered to myself, "just let me get out of here." As the man approached the enclosure, I could see him through the gaps in the fence. He was scanning the area, looking for any sign of movement. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't look too closely. "Come on," he muttered, frustration lacing his voice. "You can't be far." The lions shifted slightly, their ears perked up as they sensed the tension in the air. I could feel the fear in my chest, knowing that if I made a sound, I might provoke them. Suddenly, the man stepped closer, peering through the fence. "I know you're in there," he shouted, his voice echoing in the night. "This is your last chance." I glanced at the lions, their golden eyes now fully alert, watching the commotion with interest. My heart raced as I realized the predator in the situation was now me, trapped between a man who was clearly dangerous and the wild animals who might not take kindly to intruders. The man pulled out something shiny from his pocket, a knife, glinting in the low light. "You're going to regret this, you hear me?" he yelled, stepping back from the fence as if to circle around. I felt a surge of panic. I couldn't stay here. If he got inside the enclosure, there would be nowhere to hide. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage I had left. I scanned the area for an escape route, my eyes darting between the lions and the man outside. I needed to create a distraction, something that would give me a chance to slip away unnoticed. I remembered the prey-like behavior of the lions, how they were always alert to movement. I turned slightly and found a nearby rock, heavy and jagged. I had no choice but to throw it. With a deep breath, I lifted the rock and hurled it toward the opposite side of the enclosure, aiming for a spot behind the lions. The rock hit the ground with a loud thud, and for a moment, everything froze. The lions perked up immediately, their heads turning toward the sound. The man outside heard it too, and in that instant of distraction, I sprinted toward the far side of the enclosure, my heart racing with every step. The man shouted in confusion, his attention now directed toward the lions. "What the hell?" he yelled as he turned to face the noise. The lions started to move, their instincts kicking in as they padded toward the sound, their eyes wide with curiosity. I could see the man's panic rising as he realized he was losing control of the situation. I seized the moment and dashed toward the fence, scrambling up the side just as the man turned back to me, rage flooding his features. "You won't get away," he screamed, lunging toward the side of the enclosure. But I was faster, and with one last desperate push, I hoisted myself over the fence and landed in the grass on the other side. I took off running, my legs pumping as I sprinted toward the main entrance of the zoo, heart racing and adrenaline pumping. The police arrived just as I reached the gate, officers rushing in with flashlights and shouts. I collapsed onto the grass, gasping for breath as they surrounded me, asking questions I could barely process. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" one of the officers asked, kneeling beside me. "No, I don't think so," I gasped, trembling all over. "But he had a knife. He was trying to get me." The officers quickly organized a search of the zoo, securing the premises and ensuring that the man hadn't escaped. They found him lurking near the lion enclosure, but by then, he had already slipped away into the night, blending into the darkness. I spent hours giving statements and recounting every detail, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled over me. The incident haunted me, the knowledge that this man had been watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. In the weeks that followed, the zoo increased its security measures, and I received several counseling sessions to help process the trauma. But no amount of reassurance could erase the fear that lingered in the back of my mind. I had been so close to danger, and the reality of what could have happened weighed heavily on my heart. Months later, I read a news article about a series of attacks in the area. A string of robberies linked to a man who fit the description of my attacker. The fear of being watched, of being a target, never fully left me. As I prepared to leave the zoo on that fateful night, I glanced back at the lion enclosure, now empty and silent. I knew that the danger was still out there, that predators existed in many forms. The world is a darker place than it appears, and sometimes the most dangerous threats wear the guise of normalcy, lurking just out of sight. I still think about that night, the way the adrenaline surged through me and how quickly everything could change. Because once you face true danger, you never forget the feeling of being prey in a world full of predators. The echoes of that experience still linger, don't they? But the truth is, there are more unsettling tales from within those zoo walls, waiting to be unleashed. The phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, interrupting the quiet rhythm of my afternoon. I almost let it go to voicemail, but the unknown number from a local area code piqued my curiosity. "Hello, am I speaking with Sarah Peterson?" The man's voice was rushed, laced with a professional urgency that immediately set my teeth on edge. "This is she," I said, wiping my damp hands on a dish towel. "Ma'am, my name is Dr. Albright." My name is Dr. Albright. I'm a veterinarian with the Portland Zoo's emergency response team. We found your contact information in a wallet your husband must have dropped in the parking lot." My heart stuttered. "My husband's wallet? Ma'am, there isn't much time," he cut in, his voice sharp with impatience. "A child matching your daughter's description has been injured. She was trying to help a wounded hawk near the south parking lot. She's conscious, but she's taken a bad hit from one of its talons. We need you to get here immediately." The world tilted. My daughter, Maya, a vision of her, face pale, blood on her jacket, flashed in my mind. "Is she okay? Where is she?" "We're keeping her stable, but we need your consent for treatment. And she's asking for you," he said. The words were a gut punch. "Now listen carefully. Don't go to the main gate. It'll take too long. Meet us at the service entrance off of Canyon Road. It's a gray, unmarked gate. I'll be there waiting. We have to move fast." A service entrance? Something about that, a small discordant detail in the symphony of my panic, felt wrong. Why not the front gate, where the main offices and medical facilities were? "My name is Sarah, and this happened last fall. Life was a comfortable routine of work, school runs, and quiet evenings in our Portland suburb. I'm not a panicky person, but a threat to my child bypasses all rational thought. The man on the phone had a plausible story, filled with just enough detail to sound authentic. The zoo, a wounded animal, a plausible injury for an animal-loving kid like Maya. He was leveraging the most powerful instinct I have, the need to protect my child, and it was working. My car keys were already in my hand before I'd even hung up. But as I started for the door, my brain snagged on the details. My husband, Mark, was on a business trip in Seattle. His wallet was with him, and Maya was at school, a good 20 minutes from the zoo. She wasn't due home for another hour. The timeline was impossible. The foundation of the man's story crumbled, and a cold, sharp dread began to seep into the cracks. The caller's tone replayed in my head. He wasn't just urgent. He was pushy, cutting me off, steamrolling my questions. He wasn't the calm, reassuring voice of a medical professional. He was the impatient voice of a salesman closing a deal. And he knew my daughter's name, or at least her description. He knew my name. He knew I was married. He was trying to get me to a specific, isolated location. The puzzle pieces clicked into place, forming a picture of terrifying clarity. This wasn't a rescue. It was a lure. My breath hitched. I leaned against the wall, my legs suddenly weak. The man had my cell number. He was waiting for me. What if he called back? I had to be smart. I forced myself to take a deep, shuddering breath. I looked up the official number for the Portland Zoo on my laptop, my fingers fumbling on the keyboard. Each ring of the phone felt like an eternity. Portland Zoo. This is Brenda speaking. How can I help you? The receptionist's voice was cheerful, mundane, blessedly normal. Hi, I said, trying to keep my own voice from shaking. I received a strange call about my daughter being injured by a hawk near the south lot. There was a pause. I could hear the clatter of her keyboard. An injured child? Mom? We have no reports of any incidents today. All our animals are accounted for. And we certainly haven't had any guest injuries. Are you sure they said the Portland Zoo? Yes, I whispered, relief and terror washing over me in a sickening wave. He said his name was Dr. Albright. He said his name was Dr. Albright. He told me to meet him at a service entrance on Canyon Road. Brenda's cheerful tone vanished. Ma'am, we have no veterinarian by that name. And we would never, ever ask a parent to meet us at a service entrance. I want you to hang up with me and call 911 immediately. After calling the police, my next call was to Maya's school. The secretary assured me she was safe in her 4th grade classroom, learning about the Oregon Trail, completely unaware of the drama swirling around her. The police came and took my statement. An officer explained that it was a luring tactic, but the level of detail was disturbing. Someone had been watching us. They knew I had a daughter. They may have seen her that morning, noted what she was wearing, and built their story around that. The Los wallet was the fictional bridge to explain how they got my number. They were counting on my panic to override my logic. They never caught him. The number was from a burner phone, long since discarded. The police staked out the service entrance, but no one ever showed. Whoever it was saw that their lure had failed, but the knowledge that they were out there, that close, shattered my sense of safety. For months, every parked car on our street, every person who lingered too long at the grocery store, was a potential threat. They knew what my daughter looked like. They knew where we lived. They had a plan. And the most terrifying part is that I still don't know what would have happened if I had gone to that gray, unmarked gate, my heart filled with fear for a child who was never in danger at all. If that story sent a shiver down your spine, just wait. The next true account will take us deeper into the unsettling secrets that sometimes unfold within the zoo's boundaries. The air in the reptile house always carried weight, thick with humidity, heavy with the earthy scent of cypress mulch and the faint musk of scales. But today, something else pressed against my eardrums, a low-frequency vibration that seemed to originate from the building's bones themselves. I paused near the entrance, adjusting my veterinary bag, and listened. Beneath a familiar chorus of heat lamps and filtration systems, a deeper hum thrummed through the concrete floor, making my molars ache. I'd worked at Riverside Zoo for 8 years as a veterinary technician, and Tuesday afternoons in the reptile house were usually my sanctuary. Quiet, methodical health checks away from the chaos of the main exhibits. The sound was wrong though, not the usual mechanical symphony I knew by heart, but something that made the hair on my arms stand up. Near the Burmese python exhibit, a maintenance worker knelt beside a large electrical panel, tools scattered around him like surgical instruments. He wore standard zoo coveralls, but his movements were too precise, too focused. When he looked up and caught me staring, his smile stretched too wide. "Just upgrading the system," he called out, his voice oddly cheerful against the growing hum. "Don't touch the glass railings for the next hour or so. We're running a bit more juice through them than usual." The way he said more juice sent ice through my veins. I'd never heard a maintenance worker use that phrase, and I knew most of our facilities team by name. This man was a stranger. "My name is Dr. Elena Rodriguez, and after 8 years of treating everything from injured raptors to sick pythons, I developed an instinct for when something was dangerously wrong. The electrical hum wasn't just loud, it was affecting the animals. Samson, our 20-foot Burmese python, had his massive head raised, tongue flicking rapidly in agitation. The monitor lizards pressed themselves against the far walls of their enclosures, eyes wide and unblinking. I tried to shake off my unease, telling myself it was just routine maintenance. But as I moved through the exhibits, the wrongness intensified. The glass railings, normally cool to the touch, radiated heat. My phone showed no signal bars, unusual for a building with excellent coverage. Small details that individually meant nothing, but together painted a picture that made my stomach clench. The maintenance worker had moved to another panel near the venomous snake section. He worked with the same deliberate precision, occasionally glancing my way. His name tag read J. Morrison, but something about his posture, his movements, felt familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. That's when I noticed the security camera in the corridor. It hung at the wrong angle, lens pointed toward the floor instead of monitoring the hallway. Someone had deliberately adjusted it, and recently, the dust patterns around the mounting bracket were disturbed. My heart rate spiked. I pulled out my phone again, desperate for a signal. Nothing. The building's landline system connected through the main office, but that meant leaving the Reptile house and crossing the central plaza. "Dr. Rodriguez?" The maintenance worker's voice echoed from behind me. "Could you help me with something?" I froze. I hadn't told him my name, and my ID badge faced inward. The hair on my neck stood up as I realized he'd been watching me, learning about me. "I'm actually running late for a meeting," I called back, trying to keep my voice steady. "It'll just take a minute. I need someone familiar with the animal systems." His footsteps approached slowly, deliberately. The electrical hum seemed to pulse in rhythm with his movement, creating a sound that made my vision blur. I slipped into the quarantine area, hoping to find another exit. The back rooms were darker, lit only by red heat lamps that cast everything in an eerie crimson glow. Through the small window in the door, I could see his shadow moving back and forth, waiting. "Elena?" His voice was closer now, more intimate. "I know you're in there." The way he said my name, familiar, possessive, made my stomach turn. This wasn't random. This was someone who'd been watching me, studying my routines. A new sound joined the electrical hum, the soft hiss of pressurized air. The climate control system was being manually adjusted. The temperature began rising rapidly, and I could hear the animals in the main corridor becoming increasingly agitated. "The building's systems are fascinating," his voice carried through the door. "Did you know that with the right modifications you can override all the safety protocols? Temperature controls, ventilation, even the enclosure locks." My blood turned to ice. He wasn't just after me. He was threatening every animal in the building. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of his profile, and recognition hit me like a physical blow. James Morrison. He'd worked here 3 years ago, fired for violating safety protocols and making inappropriate comments to female staff. I'd testified against him in the disciplinary hearing. He'd come back for revenge. The quarantine area had a service tunnel that connected to the zoo's underground utility network. I found the access panel and pried it open with shaking hands, crawling forward on my elbows through the cramped space, filled with pipes and electrical conduits. Behind me, I heard Morrison enter the quarantine room. Behind me, I heard Morrison enter the quarantine room. Elena, you're making this harder than it needs to be. I just want to finish what we started. The tunnel curved and twisted, my knees scraping against rough concrete. After what felt like hours but was probably minutes, I reached another access panel that opened into the basement of the administration building. My phone immediately showed full bars. I called 911, my words tumbling out in a panicked rush about the intruder and the compromised animal systems. Police and zoo security were already responding when I heard the first explosion of glass shattering. By the time authorities breached the Reptile house, Morrison was gone. But the damage was extensive. Several enclosures had been compromised by the electrical overload. Though quick action by the emergency response team prevented any animal escapes or deaths, they found his equipment. Sophisticated temperature control, overrides, and electrical modification devices that could have killed anyone who touched the charged railings. The investigation revealed Morrison's 3-year obsession with the zoo, and specifically with me. He'd been planning this revenge scenario, studying building schematics, learning about electrical systems, waiting for the perfect opportunity. They never caught him. He'd vanished as completely as he'd appeared, leaving behind only his tools and a detailed plan that showed he'd intended to trap me in the Reptile house, while systematically releasing the most dangerous animals. I took extended leave from the zoo, changed apartments, started carrying pepper spray and taking different routes to work. But the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the knowledge that somewhere out there, Morrison was still planning, still watching, still waiting. 6 months later, I received a package at my new address. No return label, no postmark. Inside was a single photograph of the Reptile house, taken from the outside on a sunny day. Normal visitors walked past the entrance, unaware of what had happened inside. On the back, in neat handwriting, "System upgrades complete. Ready for the next test, Elena. I still work with animals, but I've never returned to the Reptile house. Sometimes when I'm alone in quiet spaces, I think I can hear it again. That low-frequency hum that makes my teeth ache and my skin crawl, and I wonder if Morrison is still out there, upgrading other systems, perfecting his methods, waiting for the perfect moment to flip the switch again. Because some hunts never really end. They just pause between seasons. It's unsettling to think these events truly happened, especially in a place meant for wonder. But believe me, more chilling zoo horrors are about to be unveiled." The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the concrete path leading into the Primate House at the Westwood Zoo. I had arrived early that day, excited to volunteer during the summer break. As I stepped inside, the familiar scent of damp earth and hay greeted me, mingled with the faint, musky odor of primates. The bright, cheerful chatter of visitors echoed through the hall. But beneath the surface, a strange tension lingered, an unease that crawled beneath my skin like 1,000 tiny ants. I made my way down the corridor toward the staff area, the fluorescent lights flickering slightly as I passed. It was just a regular Tuesday, but something felt off. As I approached the keeper dens, a soft sound caught my attention. A low, muffled sobbing that seemed to drift through the air, barely perceptible yet hauntingly clear. I paused, my heart racing. Was it just my imagination? Was it just my imagination? I shook my head, trying to dismiss it as the wind playing tricks on me, but the sound lingered, pulling at my curiosity. "Get a grip," I whispered to myself, brushing off the feeling of being watched. The shadows seemed to stretch and warp, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I stood there for a moment longer, holding my breath, straining to hear more. What was that? My mind flickered with thoughts of all the horror stories I had read. Something lurking in the dark, waiting for the right moment to strike. As I pushed the thought away, I entered the main exhibit area, where the primates were housed. The air was thick with the sounds of chattering monkeys and the occasional thud as an ape swung from its perch. But there, in the corner of my eye, I noticed something unusual. The door to one of the keeper dens was ajar, a crack of darkness yawning wide enough for someone, or something, to slip through. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "Hey, is anyone back there?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. No response. The sobbing had stopped, replaced by an unsettling silence that echoed through the hall. It was just a staff area. Surely no one would be in there. Yet as I turned to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The hours dragged on, and I busied myself with the chores, trying to push aside the strange occurrences. The cries of the apes echoed in my ears, their eyes wide with fear. I occasionally glanced over to the keeper den, half expecting someone to emerge, but the door remained closed. That unsettling feeling grew, creeping into my thoughts like a vine choking a tree. Suddenly, the emergency alarms blared to life, a shrill sound cutting through the air. Panic surged through my veins as red lights began to flash, illuminating the space in a surreal, nightmarish glow. An announcement crackled over the intercom, sending chills racing down my spine. Attention, all staff and visitors. An animal is loose in the Primate House. Please remain calm and follow lockdown procedures. My heart thundered in my chest. What animal? All the primates were safely in their enclosures, trembling in fear at the back of their cages. I took a step back, my senses heightened, every hair on my body standing on end. And then, the sobbing returned, clearer and more frantic than before. It came from the keeper den, but it was no longer muffled. Whoever was back there was in distress. I approached the door cautiously, my heart racing with each step. "Hello," I called, my voice trembling. "Is someone in there?" The sobbing stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed against me like a weight. Then I heard it, a scuffle, a scraping sound followed by a low, angry growl. My blood ran cold. My blood ran cold. This was no animal. It was a person. I hesitated, my mind racing with possibilities. Who was in there? Why were they locked away? I turned to leave, but the instinct to run collided with the urge to help. Instinct kicked in, and I made a decision. I had to find a way to secure the rest of the area before I investigated further. I dashed to the nearest emergency exit, but with the alarms blaring, it was locked tight. The only way out was through the front, and there was no way I could risk exposing myself to whatever was lurking beyond the den. The sobbing resumed, now interspersed with frantic whispers, words that twisted my stomach. "Help me, please." The voice was desperate, pleading, and it sent a chill down my spine. I could feel the tension building in my chest. Was I overreacting? Was this a prank? No, there was something more sinister at play. I took a deep breath, knowing I had to confront this head-on. I moved closer to the keeper den, my heart thumping in rhythm with the alarms. Who's there?" I called out again, trying to inject some semblance of authority into my voice, even as fear clawed at my insides. There was no immediate response, but I heard a shuffle, the sound of something being dragged across the floor. My resolve hardened, and I grasped the door handle, ready to push it open. This was it, the moment of reckoning. As I pulled the door, it creaked loudly, revealing a dimly lit space filled with shadows. I stepped inside, my eyes adjusting to the darkness. The sight before me was horrifying. A woman, disheveled and wide-eyed, crouched in the corner, her hands shaking, but beside her was a man, his face twisted in anger, a crude weapon, a metal pipe, clutched tightly in his grip. "Stay back," he shouted, his voice raw with rage. Panic surged through me and I stumbled backward. The woman's eyes were wide with terror, and in that moment I understood. This wasn't just an emergency. This was a hostage situation. My thoughts raced. How had he gotten in? Was he an employee? I couldn't process the questions swirling around in my mind. All I knew was that I needed to get out, to find help. I turned to leave, heart pounding, but the man lunged forward, blocking my path. "Don't even think about it," he spat, eyes wild with desperation. The fear in his voice was palpable, and I realized that this was more than just a crime. It was survival. I had to think quickly. "Please," I said, my voice trembling. "Let her go. You don't have to do this." The words tumbled out, but they felt inadequate, useless against the storm brewing in front of me. He hesitated, just for a moment, and I seized the opportunity. I dashed past him, adrenaline coursing through my veins, my heart racing as I sprinted down the corridor. I could hear his footsteps pounding behind me, echoing off the walls like a thunderstorm. I burst through the emergency exit, the alarm still blaring in my ears as I scrambled outside. The cool night air hit me like a slap, and I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of the main zoo entrance. I collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath, my heart racing. The authorities arrived moments later, rushing inside the Primate House. They apprehended the man, and the chaos began to settle, but the horror of that moment lingered in my mind. In the aftermath, they revealed that the man was a disgruntled former employee, someone who had been fired for misconduct. He had plotted this for weeks, waiting for the right moment to strike. The woman was unharmed, though traumatized, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that enveloped me. Life returned to normal eventually, but I was changed. Every shadow felt like a threat, every noise a potential danger. The Primate House became a haunting memory, a reminder of how quickly safety could shatter. Even now, as I lie in bed at night, the sobbing echoes in my mind, a chilling reminder of that dark day, and every time I close my eyes, I can still hear that voice, pleading for help, trapped in a nightmare that was all too real. What if there are more like him out there, just waiting for the right moment? What if the next time I'm not so lucky? Don't let the fear settle in just yet. There's another true story from behind the fences and enclosures that will make you rethink your next visit. Stick around. The reality of these experiences, even within the supposed safety of a zoo, is often more terrifying than fiction. The next chilling true account is a stark reminder of just that. You won't want to miss it. It began with a faint shuffle somewhere down the dark corridor behind me. A rustle, barely audible above the gentle hum of the Nocturnal exhibit's air conditioning. I'd brushed it off, figuring it was just another visitor moving quietly through the dim passageways. But when I glanced back, squinting into near total darkness, the empty hall stretched behind me like a black tunnel, devoid of life or movement. My skin prickled instinctively. Was someone there? Or was I just letting the darkness get to me? My name's Emma. It was early summer, and I decided to spend my Saturday afternoon at our city's zoo, a teacher in a bustling Cleveland suburb. Weekends were my rare chance to unwind. The Nocturnal house had always been my favorite, a cool, shadowy haven away from the sticky Ohio heat. I'd visited dozens of times, comforted by the familiar sounds of rustling fur and quiet chirps from creatures awake in artificial night. But today felt different, somehow oppressive. Maybe it was the oppressive humidity outside, or the sparse crowds inside. But stepping into the dim enclosure had immediately sent a tiny shiver down my spine. Shadows seemed deeper, corners darker. Still, I had shaken it off. Just a strange feeling, nothing more. Walking through the exhibit, I moved quietly from tank to tank, peering through the softly lit glass at sleepy bats, twitching rodents, and the pale, eerie glow of nocturnal fish. The narrow hallways between exhibits were nearly pitch black, illuminated only by faint red emergency lights, creating a surreal, otherworldly glow. After pausing briefly by the sugar gliders, something suddenly felt off. It was subtle, a slight movement, a sound barely there, like footsteps trailing quietly behind me. I turned slowly. Nothing. Just silent darkness. Still, the sensation of being watched lingered, unsettlingly strong. I moved forward, breathing deliberately. "It's just another visitor," I whispered, barely audible to myself. But as I stepped deeper into the exhibit, the noise returned, a gentle creak of shoe leather on tile, closer this time. My heart quickened. Glancing around again, my eyes adjusted slowly to the darkness. I spotted a figure near the exhibit exit. Large, indistinct, standing motionless. Just a visitor, I reasoned. But why was he standing there, not moving, facing directly toward me? Anxious now, I turned to leave, my pace quickening. Behind me, footsteps matched my speed. Soft, deliberate. I felt sweat gather on my forehead, pulse hammering. Don't panic, I thought desperately. You're overreacting. I paused beside the owls, trying to appear interested, glancing furtively at the reflections in the glass. The figure was closer now, lingering just at the edge of visibility, his face hidden in shadow. He moved with an eerie stillness, like he belonged there, part of the exhibit itself. The sensation intensified as I hurried down a side corridor toward the exit. Footsteps followed, almost directly behind me. My stomach knotted painfully. Suddenly, I froze. Hot breath brushed softly against my neck, sending goosebumps rippling violently over my skin. A voice, deep and measured, whispered so close I could feel lips grazing my ear. In here, nobody can see me watch you. Nobody can see what I do next. My blood turned ice cold, terror paralyzing every muscle. His voice was quiet, terrifyingly controlled. The animal exhibits around us watched silently, oblivious. In this moment, the most dangerous predator wasn't behind glass. It was inches from me, hidden by darkness. I knew I had to move. Now, summoning all my strength, I shoved away, sprinting blindly through shadows. Footsteps echoed close behind, deliberate, calm. He wasn't rushing. He knew I couldn't escape easily. Trapped in winding hallways, cloaked in darkness, I crashed through an emergency exit, bursting into daylight, lungs burning. Sunlight flooded my vision, blindingly bright. Shaking, I stumbled toward a nearby group of visitors, gasping, struggling to explain through ragged breaths. Security was summoned swiftly. Police searched thoroughly, but found nothing. Security footage revealed only shadowy glimpses. A tall man following close behind me, his face carefully hidden beneath a baseball cap, movements careful, intentional. Despite hours of questioning and a thorough investigation, they identified no suspect. He'd vanished effortlessly, leaving behind only dread. Weeks passed. Sleep eluded me. Crowds brought panic. Shadows made me tremble. Familiar places became sinister. Each night, vivid nightmares replayed, that chilling whisper, that subtle breath against my neck. Months later, a letter arrived, postmarked locally, but unsigned. Inside, a single, neatly typed sentence. I miss watching you. Hands shaking violently. I dropped the note as though burned. How had he found me? Police took the letter, promised renewed vigilance, but the reassurance rang hollow. Had already slipped unnoticed once. Could they truly protect me? Now even daylight seems menacing. Shadows feel alive, filled with unseen eyes, watching silently, patiently. Every evening as the sun dips below the horizon, fear grips me tighter, whispering softly from memory. Nobody can see me watch you. Nobody can see what I do next. And late at night, as I lie awake, dread gnaws relentlessly, a single thought echoing endlessly, hauntingly. Is he out there now, hidden in darkness, waiting quietly for his next moment? The music was cheerful. The sun was warm, and the air was thick with the smell of popcorn and cotton candy. It was Mascot Day at the zoo, and my 6-year-old son Leo was ecstatic. A smiling zebra, a clumsy-looking penguin, and a bright yellow lion paraded down the main thoroughfare, high-fiving kids. But the gorilla was different. While the other mascots were all exaggerated silliness, the gorilla's movements were quiet, almost thoughtful. As it knelt to pose for a picture with a group of children, I heard a faint metallic click from inside the suit as it shifted its weight. It wasn't the sound of a costume joint. It was sharp, precise, mechanical. But then the gorilla turned its head, its glossy, painted eyes seeming to scan the crowd, and for a chilling moment, they paused on Leo. It felt less like a mascot looking for its next photo, up, and more like a predator surveying its prey. Was I just imagining the intensity behind that fake fur face? My name is Kate. This was a few years ago, a perfect Saturday in early October. The kind of day that's made for making memories. As a single mom, I treasured these outings with Leo. The zoo, with its wide open spaces and happy crowds, always felt like a safe bubble. A place where the dangers of the world couldn't reach us. Mascot Day was an annual event. A brilliant marketing gimmick that brought in huge crowds. The costume characters were usually just sweaty college kids earning a few extra bucks. The gorilla, though, continued to set off a low thrum of unease in me. Its interactions were just a little off. While the lion mascot would playfully tousle a kid's hair, the gorilla would gently guide a child by the shoulder, leading them a step or two away from their parents to point at something. It was subtle, the kind of thing you'd only notice if you were really watching, and I was. The gesture was too proprietary, too controlling. I saw it lead a little girl in a pink dress towards the edge of the sea lion exhibit, her mom laughing and fumbling for her phone a few feet away, oblivious. The gorilla pointed at the water, but its head was angled towards the girl, watching her, always watching. I pulled Leo a little closer. Am I being crazy? I asked myself. He's just an employee in a suit. My paranoia got the better of me. I told Leo I wanted to see the Reptile House, which was in the same direction the gorilla seemed to be headed. We followed at a distance. He didn't stop to interact with any more families. Instead, he moved with a new purpose, taking a side path marked gardens, a much less crowded loop of the zoo. He was walking like a man now, not an ape, his shoulders rolling with a natural human gait. This wasn't a performance. He was going somewhere. My heart started to beat a little faster. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. I told Leo to stay behind a large planter, promising him an extra large ice cream if he was quiet for just 1 minute. I crept forward, peering around a corner. The gorilla was in a small, secluded alcove, almost completely hidden from the path by overgrown bushes. He was taking off the head of the costume. I braced myself for the sight of a flushed, sweaty teenager, but the man who emerged was older, maybe in his 40s, with a grim, emotionless face and cold, calculating eyes. He pulled a cell phone from a pocket sewn inside the suit and put it to his ear. He wasn't resting. He was reporting. His voice was low and gravelly, a chilling whisper that cut through the cheerful sounds of the zoo. I'm back by the aviary, he said. I've got 3 possibles. Good families, not paying attention. They'll follow a friendly gorilla anywhere. Ice flooded my veins. 3 possibles. The phrase echoed in the silent, screaming space of my mind. He wasn't an employee. He wasn't a mascot. He was a hunter. He ended the call, and as he turned to put the gorilla head back on, his eyes met mine. There was no surprise in his expression, no panic, just a flat, dead recognition. He knew I'd heard him. In that moment, the entire world shrank to the space between us. A predator, his cover blown, and the mother who had just stumbled into his trap. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. I snatched Leah's hand and ran, not back the way we came, but forward, deeper into the gardens, away from the man in his gorilla suit. I didn't look back. I found a zoo employee, a gardener trimming hedges, and gasped out what I'd seen, my words tumbling over each other. He looked at me, confused, but something in my terror must have been convincing. He spoke urgently into his radio. Within minutes, security guards were swarming the area. They found the suit, hastily discarded in a trash can behind the Reptile House. But the man was gone, vanished back into the very crowd he'd been preying on. The police called it a scouting attempt by a sophisticated abduction ring. They used crowded, chaotic events to blend in, to observe families, to find the possibles, the trusting children, the distracted parents. They never caught him. For weeks, I had nightmares. I'd see that dead-eyed stare, hear that gravelly voice. The zoo, once a place of joy, became a landscape of fear in my memory. Now, whenever I'm in a crowd and see a costume character, I don't see the fuzzy, smiling animal. I see the zipper on the back of the suit, And I wonder who is really inside, looking out through those glassy painted eyes. That was just one glimpse into the hidden shadows of the zoo. Are you ready for another? Because the next chilling true story is coming right up, and it's even closer to home than you think. The day was supposed to be a fun family outing, a break from the routine of school and work. My wife, Megan, and our two kids, Jamie and Lily, were bubbling with excitement as we approached the local zoo, known for its impressive walk through Aquarium tunnel. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow on the crowds milling about, laughter and chatter filling the air. We joined the throngs of families, all eager to experience the wonders of marine life. As we entered the tunnel, the world outside faded away. The walls were thick glass, and the ceiling seemed to vanish into the depths of the ocean, where sharks glided gracefully above us. The vibrant colors of the fish darting around made the moment feel magical. Yet, beneath the surface of this enchantment, a subtle tension lurked. I noticed a faint flicker in the lights overhead, almost imperceptible, but it caught my attention. I brushed it off as a quirk of the building's aging infrastructure. "Did you see that?" I asked Megan, who was busy snapping pictures of Jamie and Lily playing with the fish. "See what?" she replied, glancing up briefly before returning to her camera. Just then, a low humming sound resonated through the tunnel, a vibration that seemed to ripple through the water, echoing off the glass walls. I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was strange, like something was just out of reach, lurking in the depths, but I dismissed it, attributing it to the acoustics of the tunnel. We pressed on, the excitement of the kids drawing me back into the moment. But as we moved further into the tunnel, the lights flickered again, this time more dramatically. A series of rapid flashes momentarily plunged us into darkness, and I instinctively tightened my grip on Jamie's hand. Everything felt wrong. When the lights returned, I was met with a chilling sight. We were utterly alone. The tunnel, usually bustling with families and children, was empty. The sounds of laughter and chatter had vanished, replaced by an eerie silence that echoed in my ears. I looked around, panic beginning to bubble within me. Where did everyone go? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Megan's eyes widened with confusion. They were right behind us, she said, her voice rising. What happened? I turned toward the emergency exit doors at both ends of the tunnel, my heart racing. They were locked, secured from the outside. I felt the blood drain from my face. "This isn't right," I said, trying to keep my voice steady for the kids. Jamie tugged at my sleeve, his youthful innocence shattered by fear. "Dad, I don't like this," he said, looking up at me with wide, fearful eyes. "Let's just stay calm," I said, forcing a smile even though my heart raced. Deep down, I was terrified. The reality of our situation began to sink in. We were trapped in a glass tube, surrounded by water, and now utterly alone. I glanced back down the tunnel, straining to hear anything. Footsteps, voices, anything. But all I could hear was the soft hum of the filtration system, and the faint sound of water trickling. It was unnerving. I felt a prickling sensation at the back of my neck, as if someone or something was watching us. "Let's go back," I suggested, hoping to retrace our steps. We turned to head back toward the entrance, but as we reached the halfway point, another flicker of the lights caught my attention. This time, they dimmed, and then came back on with a violent buzz, illuminating the tunnel in harsh light. And then I saw it, a shadow, flitting just beyond the glass, something large and dark moving in the water outside. My heart pounded in my chest. I squinted to see better, but the shadow vanished, leaving only ripples in its wake. I felt a surge of panic. Was it a trick of the light? Or was there something out there? "Dad, I'm scared," Lily said, her small voice trembling. "Me too," I admitted, my voice cracking. "But we'll be okay. I promise." I tried to reassure myself as much as her. As we stood there, the silence grew heavier, and my mind raced with possibilities. What if the zoo was closed? What if we were forgotten in this tunnel? I tried to shake off the dread, but it clung to me like a heavy fog. Then I noticed something else. The air felt colder, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones. I looked up at the glass ceiling, and for a moment I thought I saw something move behind it. Something large and dark. My breath hitched in my throat. "Guys, let's keep moving," I said, my voice strained. I led the kids back toward the exit, but now every sound felt amplified. The soft sloshing of water, the distant hum of the machinery, and the steady rhythm of my heart. We reached the emergency exit again, but the door was still locked tight. I banged against it, desperation clawing at my throat. "Help! Is anyone out there?" I heard a faint echo, but no one responded. I turned back to Megan, who was pale and shaking. "We have to find another way," she said, panic threading her voice. "Let's check the other side," I suggested, my mind racing. We moved cautiously, our footsteps muted against the slick floor. Just then, the lights flickered again, and I caught a glimpse of movement just outside the tunnel. It was fast, too fast to make sense of. A shadow darting beneath the water. My stomach dropped. "Did you see that?" I gasped, gripping Jamie's hand tighter. Megan's eyes were wide and she nodded slowly. "What was that?" "You don't know?" I replied, my voice trembling. "But we need to get out of here." We rushed back down the tunnel, glancing back every few seconds, half expecting to see something pursuing us. The oppressive silence felt suffocating, and every flicker of light sent jolts of fear through my body. As we reached the far end of the tunnel, I felt a sense of dread settle in. I pounded on the door again, desperation flooding my voice. "Help, please. We're trapped." But the only response was the echo of my own voice, bouncing back at us like a cruel taunt. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated through the tunnel, and the lights flickered violently, plunging us into darkness once more. Fear gripped me as I stood frozen, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I could hear the sound of water splashing, and then I felt the vibrations of something moving in the water, something large, thrashing against the glass. "Megan!" I shouted, pulling the kids close. "Get back!" The lights flickered back on, illuminating the tunnel, and I saw it, an enormous figure, a man, his face twisted in rage and desperation. He was clawing at the glass, his hands leaving streaks of water as he pressed himself against the wall, eyes wide and wild. "Let me out," he screamed, his voice a mixture of fear and fury. "You can't keep me here." My heart raced as I realized he was not a creature of the ocean, but a human being, trapped just like us. "We have to go," I shouted, pulling Megan and the kids back. But he was relentless, pounding against the glass, his breath fogging the surface. "Help! You have to help me." I felt a wave of panic wash over me, the fear of being trapped with someone so unhinged. "Stay away from the glass," I shouted, backing away. The man's eyes locked onto mine, filled with a mix of desperation and something darker. "You don't understand. They're coming for us." The words sent chills down my spine. "Who's coming?" "Coming," I demanded. But he only shook his head, panic overtaking him. I turned to Megan, her face pale and frightened. "We need to find a way out," I said, urgency in my voice. We moved back toward the entrance, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The man continued to pound on the glass behind us, and I could feel the vibrations in my chest. The chaos of it all was overwhelming, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. As we reached the exit doors once more, I pounded on them, desperation clawing at my throat. "Help, please." But there was no response, only silence. Then I heard it again, the low, ominous hum from earlier, growing louder, vibrating through the tunnel. I turned to see the man thrashing against the glass, his eyes wide with terror. "You have to get out. They're coming." Panic surged within me as I tried to comprehend what he meant. "What are you talking about?" I shouted, but he only pressed harder against the glass, his breath fogging the surface. The lights flickered once more, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. "We need to go," I urged Megan, taking the kids' hands and moving down the tunnel. As we approached the exit, The humming grew louder, transforming into a deafening roar. I felt the ground shake beneath my feet, and I turned back to see the man still clawing at the glass, his face twisted in terror. "Help me!" he screamed. And then, with a final crash, the glass shattered. Water surged into the tunnel, and I instinctively pulled Jamie and Lily back, my heart racing. "Run!" I shouted, pushing them ahead of me. We sprinted toward the exit, the water rising behind us. I could hear the man's screams blending with the roar of the water as we stumbled through the emergency doors, bursting into the open air of the zoo. We collapsed onto the grass outside, gasping for breath, the chaos of the tunnel still ringing in my ears. In the aftermath, the zoo staff arrived, frantic and confused. They had been unaware of the situation unfolding in the tunnel, but as we recounted the events, a chilling realization settled in. The man had escaped from a nearby psychiatric facility, and the zoo had been unaware of his presence. He had somehow slipped into the aquarium area, blending into the crowd before chaos ensued. As we were escorted to safety, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in my chest. The experience changed me. Every time I close my eyes, I see the man's face, twisted in fear and anger, clawing at the glass. And even now, as I lie awake at night, I can still hear the echoes of his screams, a haunting reminder of how quickly safety can vanish in an instant, leaving only terror in its wake. What if there are more like him out there, hidden in plain sight? What if the next time it's not just a trick of the light,